A certain king, who had a son overmuch given to hunting and coursing, ordered one of his wazers to be in attendance upon him whithersoever he might wend. One day the youth set out for the chase accompanied by his father's minister, and, as they jogged on together, a big wild beast came in sight. Cried the wazir to the king's son, "Up and at yon noble quarry!" So the prince followed it until he was lost to every eye and the chase got away from him in the waste, whereby he was confused and he knew not which way to turn, when lo! A damsel appeared ahead and she was in tears. The king's son asked, "Who art thou?" And she answered, "I am daughter to a king among the kings of Hind, and I was traveling with a caravan in the desert when drowsiness overcame me, and I fell from my beast unwittingly, whereby I am cut off from my people and sore bewildered." The prince, hearing these words, pitied her case and, mounting her on his horse's crupper, travelled until he passed by an old ruin, when the damsel said to him, "O my master, I wish to obey a call of nature." He therefore set her down at the ruin where she delayed so long that the king's son thought that she was only wasting time, so he followed her without her knowledge and behold, she was a Gula, a wicked ogress, who was saying to her brood, "O my children, this day I bring you a fine fat youth for dinner," whereto they answered, "Bring him quick to us, O our mother, that we may browse upon him our bellies full." The prince hearing their talk, made sure of death and his side muscles quivered in fear for his life, so he turned away and was about to fly. The Gula came out and seeing him in sore affright, for he was trembling in every limb, cried, "Wherefore art thou afraid?" And he replied, "I have hit upon an enemy whom I greatly fear." Asked the Gula, "Didst thou not say, I am a king's son?" And he answered, "Even so." Then quoth she, "Why dost not give thine enemy something of money and so satisfy him?" Quoth he, "He will not be satisfied with my purse but only with my life, and I mortally fear him and am a man under oppression." She replied, "If thou be so distressed, as thou deemest, ask aid against him from Allah, who will surely protect thee from his ill doing and from the evil whereof thou art afraid." Then the prince raised his eyes heavenwards and cried, "O thou who answerest the necessitous when he calleth upon thee and dispellest his distress, O my God! Grant me victory over my foe and turn him from me, for thou over all things art almighty." The Gula, hearing his prayer, turned away from him, and the prince returned to his father, and told him the tale of the wazir, whereupon the king summoned the minister to his presence and then and there slew him. "Thou likewise, O king, if thou continue to trust this leech, shalt be made to die the worst of deaths. He verily thou madest much of and whom thou entreatedst as an intimate, will work thy destruction. Seest thou not how he healed the disease from outside thy body by something grasped in thy hand? Be not assured that he will not destroy thee by something held in like manner." Replied King Yunan, "Thou hast spoken sooth, O Wazir, it may well be as thou hintest, O my well-advising minister, and belike this sage hath come as a spy searching to put me to death, for assuredly if he cured me by a something held in my hand, he can kill me by a something given me to smell." Then asked King Yunan, "O minister, what must be done with him?" And the Wazir answered, "Send after him this very instant and summon him to thy presence, and when he shall come strike him across the neck, and thus shalt thou rid thyself of him and his wickedness, and deceive him ere he can deceive thee." "Thou hast again spoken sooth, O Wazir," said the king and sent one to call the sage who came in joyful mood for he knew not what had appointed for him the compassionate, as a certain poet saith by way of illustration. "O thou who fearest fate, confiding fair, trust all to him who built the world, and wait. What fate saith be perforce must be, my lord. And safe art thou from th undecreed of fate." As Duban the physician entered he addressed the king in these lines. "And fail I of my thanks to thee nor thank thee day by day for whom composed I prose and verse, for whom I say and lay. Thou lavishedst thy generous gifts ere they were craved by me, thou lavishedst thy boons unsought sans pretext or delay. How shall I stint my praise of thee, how shall I cease to laud the grace of thee in secrecy and patentest display? Nay, I will thank thy benefits, for I thy favours lie light on my thought and tongue, though heavy on my back they weigh." And he said further on the same theme, "Turn thee from grief nor care a jot. Commit thy needs to fate and lot. Enjoy the present passing well and let the past be clean forgot. For whatso haply seemeth worse shall work thy will as Allah wot. Allah shall do whate'er He wills and in His will oppose Him not. And further still. To th all wise subtle one trust worldly things rest thee from all whereto the worldling clings. Learn wisely well naught cometh by thy will but e'en as willeth Allah, King of kings. And lastly. Gladsome and gay forget thine every grief full often grief the wisest hearts outwar. Thought is but folly and the feeble slave shun it and so be saved evermore. Said the king for sole return, knowest thou why I have summoned thee? And the sage replied, Allah most highest alone kenneth hidden things. But the king rejoined, I summoned thee only to take thy life and utterly to destroy thee. Duban the wise wondered at this strange address with exceeding wonder and asked, O king, and wherefore wouldest thou slay me, and what ill have I done thee? And the king answered, Men tell me thou art a spy sent hither with intent to slay me, and lo! I will kill thee ere I be killed by thee. Then he called to his sworder, and said, Strike me off the head of this traitor and deliver us from his evil practices. Quoth the sage, Spare me and Allah will spare thee, slay me not or Allah shall slay thee. And he repeated to him these very words, Even as I to thee, O Ifrit, and yet thou wouldst not let me go, being bent upon my death. King Yunan only rejoined, I shall not be safe without slaying thee, for, as thou healedst me by something held in hand, so am I not secure against thy killing me by something given me to smell or otherwise. Said the physician, This then, O king, is thy requital and reward, thou returnest only evil for good. The king replied, There is no help for it, die thou must and without delay. Now when the physician was certified that the king would slay him without waiting, he wept and regretted the good he had done to other than the good. As one hath said on this subject, Of wit and wisdom is Maymun a bear whose sire in wisdom all the wits outstrippeth. Man may not tread on mud or dust or clay save by good sense, else trippeth he and slippeth. Hereupon the sworder stepped forward and bound the sage Duban's eyes and bared his blade, saying to the king, By thy leave, while the physician wept and cried, Spare me and Allah will spare thee, and slay me not or Allah shall slay thee, and began repeating. I was kind and scaped not, they were cruel and escaped, and my kindness only led me to ruination hall. If I live I'll ne'er be kind, if I die, then all be damned who follow me, and curses their kindliness befall. Is this, continued Duban, the return I meet from thee? Thou givest me, meseems, but crocodile boon. Quoth the king, What is the tale of the crocodile? And quoth the physician, Impossible for me to tell it in this my state. Allah upon thee, spare me, as thou hoppest Allah shall spare thee. And he wept with exceeding weeping. Then one of the king's favorites stood up and said, O king! Grant me the blood of this physician, we have never seen him sin against thee, or doing aught save healing thee from a disease which baffled every leech and man of science. Said the king, Ye wot not the cause of my putting to death this physician, and this it is. If I spare him, I do myself to certain death, for one who healed me of such a malady by something held in my hand, surely can slay me by something held to my nose, and I fear lest he kill me for a price, since haply he is some spy whose sole purpose in coming hither was to compass my destruction. So there is no help for it, die he must, and then only shall I be sure of my own life. Again cried Duban, Spare me and Allah shall spare thee, and slay me not or Allah shall slay thee. But it was in vain. Now when the physician, O Ifrit, knew for certain that the king would kill him, he said, O king, if there be no help but I must die, grant me some little delay that I may go down to my house and release myself from mine obligations and direct my folk and my neighbors where to bury me and distribute my books of medicine. Amongst these I have one, the rarest of rarities, which I would present to thee as an offering, keep it as a treasure in thy treasury. And what is in the book? Asked the king, and the sage answered, Things beyond compt, and the least of secrets is that if, directly after thou hast cut off my head, thou open 3 leaves and read 3 lines of the page to thy left hand, my head shall speak and answer every question thou deignest ask of it. The king wondered with exceeding wonder, and shaking with delight at the novelty, said, O physician, dost thou really tell me that when I cut off thy head it will speak to me? He replied, "Yes, O king." Quoth the king, "This is indeed a strange matter." And forthwith sent him closely guarded to his house, and Duban then and there settled all his obligations. Next day he went up to the king's audience hall, where emirs and wazirs, chamberlains and nabobs, grandees and lords of estate were gathered together, making the presence chamber gay as a garden of flower beds. And lo! The physician came up and stood before the king, bearing a worn old volume and a little etui of metal full of powder, like that used for the eyes. Then he sat down and said, "Give me a tray." So they brought him one, and he poured the powder upon it and leveled it, and lastly spake as follows: "O king, take this book, but do not open it till my head falls, then set it upon this tray, and bid press it down upon the powder, when forthright the blood will cease flowing. That is the time to open the book." The king thereupon took the book and made a sign to the sworder, who arose and struck off the physician's head, and placing it on the middle of the tray, pressed it down upon the powder. The blood stopped flowing, and the sage Duban unclosed his eyes and said, "Now open the book, O king." The king opened the book, and found the leaves stuck together, so he put his finger to his mouth and, by moistening it, he easily turned over the first leaf, and in like way the second, and the third, each leaf opening with much trouble, and when he had unstuck 6 leaves he looked over them and, finding nothing written thereon, said, "O physician, there is no writing here." Duban replied, "Turn over yet more," and he turned over 3 others in the same way. Now the book was poisoned, and before long the venom penetrated his system, and he fell into strong convulsions, and he cried out, "The poison hath done its work." Whereupon the sage Duban's head began to improvise. There be rulers who have ruled with a foul tyrannic sway, but they soon became as though they had never been just. They had one justice, they oppressed and were oppressed by fortune, who requited them with ban and bane and teen. So they faded like the morn, and the tongue of things repeats take this for that, nor vent upon fortune's ways thy spleen. No sooner had the head ceased speaking than the king rolled over dead. Now I would have thee know, O Ifrit, that if King Yunan had spared the sage Duban, Allah would have spared him, but he refused so to do and decreed to do him dead, wherefore Allah slew him, and thou too, O Ifrit, if thou hadst spared me, Allah would have spared thee. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Then quoth Dunuzad, "O my sister, how pleasant is thy tale, and how tasteful, how sweet, and how grateful." She replied, "And where is this compared with what I could tell thee this coming night, if I live and the king spare me?" Said the king in himself, "By Allah, I will not slay her until I hear the rest of her story, for truly it is wondrous." They rested that night in mutual embrace until dawn. Then the king went forth to his darbar, the wazirs and troops came in, and the audience hall was crowded, so the king gave orders and judged and appointed and deposed and bade and forbade the rest of that day, when the court broke up, and King Shahryar entered his palace. Now when it was the 6th night,